Hi everybody and welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Greta and I'm the dietitian at John's Daughter Cancer Center. So I'm back with another great recipe, another brand new one. This one's actually one I make quite a bit in my own home and I enjoyed it so much I had to share it with you. So it's for some braised white beans and greens. The best part about it is we are going to highlight those canned beans that I love so much. We're going to use a couple cans of white cannellini beans. Beans are great. They add lots of plant-based protein. They're loaded with fiber. And canned beans are easy. They don't take very long to cook. We've got a couple fun ingredients in this too, some fresh ingredients. So we're going to get started and start chopping things up. So you do get your choice of what herb you want in this. If you want to do thyme or rosemary, either one works great. I'm trying to use up the rest of my rosemary out of my greenhouse. It's drying up just a little bit. So I'm going to chop that first because that's going to go in with our fennel and onions. So remember, we just hold the stem and pull and we get all the leaves right off of there. Discard the stems. Every time I have fresh herbs in something, I tend to do more than it says. I chop up whatever my gardener brings me, so it might be a little bit more than 2 teaspoons, but that's okay. So I'm just going to put my rosemary here in a pile. Some fly away from me. We're just going to do a little chop with our rosemary. Like I said, this works great with thyme too. Both of them are sort of earthy, add a lot of earthy richness to your recipe. Herbs go great in pots. Like I said, mine made it even through the winter. Some of them, my hardier ones like rosemary and thyme. Put them in your windowsill and then you've got fresh herbs all the time. And then once left, if they're dried, you can store those and keep them, and then you've got dried herbs to use too. You can substitute dried herbs if you don't have fresh available. That's just fine. All right. I'm going to put them in my bowl here, where I'm going to put my other fresh things. We're going to do 1 small onion, yellow or white, whatever you have on hand. We're also going to incorporate fennel, which may be something new to some people. Fennel is a great vegetable. It has almost a licoricey kind of smell and taste to it. Once it cooks down, it's not going to taste like licorice, I promise, if you're not a big fan of black licorice, but it does add another really nice earthy flavor. So I'm going to show you how to prep your fennel, because fennel comes with some parts to it, and some of the parts we use for the recipe and some we don't. I'm going to show you what you can do with them. All right, just get my onion chopped here. With my rosemary, because we're going to cook together. You know me, I like to get everything chopped and this all sort of just falls together. It is a pretty quick recipe to put together because we are using canned beans and they cook so fast. This is a great weeknight recipe if you need something quick and easy. Onions in. Sort of hold my onion together and then run my knife down and it sort of holds its shape, just like that, and then we get perfect slices. If you feel like yours rolls around a little bit, you can lay it down flat and chop it. Ooh, this onion is strong. Start to cry. It's not because I don't love onion. Ooh. Wondered if the trick worked putting on a pair of goggles. I've seen people do that. Put on like a pair of swimming goggles when they're chopping their onions so that their eyes don't water. Ooh, this guy was strong. All right, it only means he's gonna taste that much better, right? All right, so let's talk about fennel. A lot of times when you buy fennel, it looks like this. So it has some parts at the top, which we are not gonna use for this. We're just gonna use the bulb. So I'm gonna cut that part off. Now don't discard this. If you make stock, keep that because you can use that in your veggie stock. I'm gonna trim the bottom off. And then on the inside, there's sort of a core in there. It's kind of tough. We don't want to use that. So I'm going to cut it in half, kind of like when you cut up a cabbage. We're just going to cut that core out. We don't want that. Just like that. Discard your cores. And then we're just going to chop it up. It has such a great smell to it. When you start cutting it, you'll be like, wow, that smells so good. Believe it or not, fennel is actually pretty easy to find. It is pretty readily available. We just probably bypass it a lot because we don't know what to do with it. It's delicious cooked with potatoes too. Gives them a whole nother level of flavor. I do use fennel in my veggie stock when I make it. And that's going to go in with our onion. So I'm going to quick chop up the rest of this fennel and we're going to come back and we're going to work on our greens. Okay, so I've got my fennel and onion and rosemary ready to go. So now I'm going to work on my greens. So this is a whole bunch of rainbow chard. The nice thing about this recipe, you can use whatever kind of greens you prefer or you have on hand. I'm kind of partial to rainbow chard. But whatever kind of green you pick, chard comes with a really kind of stiffer stem and we're not going to use that as with the greens. It will take longer to cook. So the trick is to hold the stem and pull, woo, and you get the green part off and that separates it from the stem. So I'm just going to go through, pull the greens off the stems. So you can use the stems, you would just need to cook them with your ingredients to take a little bit longer to cook, like your onions and your fennel. So what I'm going to do is pull the greens off. Just like that. So I try to find a purpose for everything. I'm going to set my greens aside for just a minute. Come back to your stems. So if you just trim the end of your stems, the stems are kind of like celery. They're that same kind of thickness and consistency. Trimmings off. That stem is not so nice. I'm going to get rid of that one. And then you're just going to chop them and cook them in with your onions and your fennel. And that way you get the full use of all the parts. So I like to use it all. And they have a very mild flavor. You really probably won't even notice them. All right, so I'm adding that in with my onions and fennel. And look how pretty they are. Rainbow chard, it can be yellow and green and red and almost like a pinkish color. It's just super pretty. All right, and then our greens, we'll just bring that back and sort of kind of coarsely chop through them. You can do this by hand too if you just want to tear them up into sort of bite-sized pieces. They don't take very long to cook. They're just going to kind of wilt. So I'm going to keep working on those. I'm going to put them in a bowl separate from that. And just kind of break them into sort of bite-ish sized pieces. I kind of roll mine into a pile. That way they're easy to chop through. Escarole works for this. Kale will work for this. Whatever kind of green you have or you prefer. I like Swiss chard. It's a little less bitter than like a kale. It has a nice sort of mild flavor. It holds its shape a little bit better than, let's say, like a spinach. All right. The only other thing we have left to chop is going to be our garlic. We're going to do 5 cloves of garlic. They're going to go in separate, so I've got my 5 cloves here. I'm going to work on chopping those, and we'll be right back and get this started. Okay, so I'm back over here at my stove. I've got my Dutch oven heating with about 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil. It's on medium heat. So I'm going to go ahead and add, step back so it doesn't sizzle at me. I'm going to add my fennel, my onion, my charred stems, and my rosemary. And we're just going to let them cook down about 4 to 6 minutes. Until they just start to soften. Make sure they get well coated in all that nice oil. Alright, and then we're going to come back in about 5 minutes and I'll show you what they look like. Alright, so our fennel, onions, and Swiss chard stems with that rosemary smells fantastic. And they're all nice and softened. They're starting to get a couple little brown spots on the corners, which is perfect. So I'm going to go ahead now and add my garlic. And to that, I'm going to add about 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. So if you don't want that little bit of heat in there, you can omit these. But we're just doing a little bit. It's going to just sort of kick the flavors up. I like to run them through my fingers and kind of break them up to help them release their flavor a little bit. All right. We're just going to give this a minute. Sort of that magic moment again. Done that a lot this session. That smells so good. Cooking that rosemary in with your veggies, I can't even tell you how good that smells. Oh, there's my garlic. Alright, just starting to smell my garlic. Boy, does that smell good. Alright, so now we're going to work on our chard. So this doesn't take very long. We just want to sort of wilt it. So we're going to just add a couple handfuls and let that sort of combine with our hot veggies. And then that'll start just wilting down. This way you don't have a huge mound of Swiss chard that you're trying to tame. We just do it 1 handful or 2 handfuls at a time. See how it just sort of joins in the party. Just sort of wilts down a little bit as it gets that heat. And we can go add a bit more. It looks like a lot. I know it looks like a ton, but it really just does wilt down. Shrinks away. All right, and there we go. That's why we can use a whole bunch. Notice I did not salt this because I don't want the salt to draw the liquid out of the Swiss chard too fast. Great. So now I'm going to go ahead and add 2 cups of my veggie stock in here. Ooh, it's sizzling away already. And then I'm going to add in my white beans. This is 2 cans of drained low sodium cannellini beans. because everything was so hot and it's only 2 cups of liquid. It's gonna come up to heat really fast. We're just gonna let this simmer for about 6 to 8 minutes. While it's doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and salt and pepper it now. So I'm gonna add some pepper. You know me, I like lots of pepper. Now I don't put much, because I make my own veggie stock, I don't put much salt in it, because I like to salt my other layers and have more control. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of salt to this layer. Give that a stir to combine. So once this comes up to a simmer, it's only gonna take about 6 to 8 minutes, because everything is really already very cooked. And while it's simmering, to kind of make it thicker, because it actually is already simmering, you're just gonna kind of mash some of those beans a little bit, and that will help kind of thicken your broth. All right, so we're gonna let this go another 7 to 8 minutes or so. We're gonna come back and see what it looks like. All right, so everything's been sort of simmering here together for about 6 to 8 minutes. As you see, since I smashed some of my beans, it's starting to really nicely thicken up. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it off. And I'm gonna take it off my heat, spoon in here. I'm gonna come back over to my counter. I'm gonna finish it up over here. Oh, it smells so good. So the greens have had a chance to get really nice and tender. You can see that sauce is just starting to get just a little bit thickened from sort of mashing up those beans. It is amazing. All right, so we're gonna add about a tablespoon of lemon juice. I always seem to have like a half of a lemon in my refrigerator, which I always figure about a half lemon's about a tablespoon of lemon juice. This is just gonna really brighten up those greens. So I'm just squeezing my lemon juice in there. I'm gonna give that a stir. It doesn't really make it as lemony as much as the acidity just really just brightens up your greens. It's so rich. It's gonna taste like you cooked this for hours because you used that veggie stock. All right, now we're gonna put a couple tablespoons. I'm using Parmesan. The original recipe called for Pecorino Romano. I am not partial to Pecorino Romano cheese, so I am doing some just freshly grated Parmesan cheese. And I'm gonna guess that that's probably about a couple tablespoons right there. Give that a stir to combine. All right, and the next ingredient, it's optional, but I did it the first time and you know, it was really delicious. So at this point, you can go ahead and add in about a half a cup. I've got here some part skim mozzarella cheese that I shredded. So always buy the block of cheese and shred it yourself. It's more economical and it will taste better. It doesn't have those thickeners in it that they put in bagged cheese, so it doesn't stick together. It also it just tastes better. So we're just gonna put about a half a cup of Parmesan cheese. Once it gets into that really nice hot broth, it's just gonna start to melt. Oh, that looks so good. And it smells so good. And there you go. So an easy, super fast, and delicious meal for any day of the week. So thank you again for watching and enjoy.